Welcome to NTD News. I'm Cindy Drucare. President Trump stepping up his rhetoric on Iran after the regime responded poorly to the latest round of disciplinary sanctions.
President Trump is making clear that he will not be bullied by what he called the uncompassionate Iranian government. This morning, he wrote on Twitter that any attack by Iran on anything American will be met with great and overwhelming force. Trump's comments follow a series of antagonistic moves by the Islamic regime, which recently quadrupled its uranium production closer to weapons-grade levels and announced it will soon breach internationally agreed limits on uranium production. Last Thursday, Iran shot down a United States surveillance drone. Washington has tried other measures to restrain Iran, including newly imposed U.S. sanctions on Iranian oil exports, the country's main source of income. This morning, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Abbas Mousavi said that the sanctions were useless and would end diplomacy between the nations, while the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani fired insults towards Trump and the White House in a televised address. Trump wrote in a tweet that for Iran, sadly, the thing they do understand is strength and power, and the USA is by far the most powerful military force in the world.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is urging Russia to destroy a new missile before an August deadline. Destruction of the missile will save a treaty that keeps land-based nuclear warheads out of Europe.
If Moscow refuses to destroy the missile system, NATO defense ministers will formulate a response tomorrow. According to the United States, the system makes short-notice nuclear attacks on Europe possible and breaks the 1987 Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. The treaty eliminated the medium-range missile arsenals of the world's two biggest nuclear powers, the United States and the Soviet Union. This reduced their ability to launch a nuclear strike at short notice. Russia warned this week of a standoff comparable to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis if the United States deploys land-based missile systems near Russia's borders.
We do not want a new arms race. But as Russia is deploying new missiles, we must ensure that our deterrence and defense remains credible and effective.
Without a deal, the United States will withdraw from the treaty on August 2nd. The withdrawal would remove constraints on developing its own nuclear-capable medium-range missiles.
The agency that secures the border is getting a shake-up in its leadership. NTD's Hallie Killam has more on who's leaving.
The acting head of Customs and Border Protection is stepping down. John Sanders reportedly told the agency's employees he will be leaving July 5th. However, he did not tell them why. Sanders took over as head of Customs and Border Protection in April after the former commissioner became the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. President Trump was asked today if he requested Sanders step down, and if not, why he was leaving.
No, I know there was going to be a change there. I've made changes, very good changes. We're moving some people around into different locations.
He went on to talk about the difficult job Border Patrol agents have with a large influx of migrants at the southern border. Hallie Killam, NTD News.
The White House today announced a new press secretary to replace Sarah Sanders. But the announcement came from the East Wing instead of the West Wing. NTD's Hallie Killam tells us why.
Melania Trump took to Twitter today to announce the new White House press secretary, Stephanie Grisham. The reason Melania made the announcement is because Grisham has been working as her spokesperson for the past 2 years. Grisham will still work for the First Lady, but now has 2 additional titles. She will take over for Sarah Sanders as White House press secretary, as well as fill the vacant White House communications director role. Bill Shine, the former communications director, left in March to advise the Trump campaign. Sarah Sanders' last day is Friday. She welcomed the announcement on Twitter, saying she was sad to leave the White House, but was happy to leave the team in such great hands. Hallie Killam, NTD News.
Global stock markets fell today as traders look ahead to the G20 summit in Japan that starts on Friday, where they're hoping the United States and China will revive their trade talks.
Investors remain cautious amid rising tensions in the Middle East and uncertainty surrounding the outcome of the U.S.-China trade war. Today at the Council on Foreign Relations, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said the central bank will continue to closely monitor incoming data and act as appropriate to sustain expansion.
So far this year, the economy has performed reasonably well. Solid fundamentals are supporting continued growth and strong job creation, keeping the unemployment rate near historic lows. Although inflation has been running somewhat below our symmetric 2% objective, we've expected it to pick up, supported by solid growth and a strong job market.
After Powell failed to signal rate cuts ahead, the Dow dropped more than 175 points. The S&P 500 dropped almost 1%, and the Nasdaq fell 1.5%. Investors are moving toward perceived safe havens as the dollar weakens, global economic growth slows, and political tensions increase. Gold is near a 6-year high, gaining 10% in price so far this month, climbing above $1,400 an ounce for the first time since August 2013. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And an update on the suspected hate crime hoax by Empire actor Jussie Smollett. With a new investigation underway, further evidence in the case has been released. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the details on how Smollett could be retried on felony charges.
It's being called a miscarriage of justice. Jussie Smollett is accused of orchestrating a hate crime. And yesterday, Chicago police publicly released over 1,000 files from Smollett's case, including more than 90 hours of video, such as this police body camera video showing Smollett with a rope around his neck, claiming he was attacked.
Do you want to take it off or anything?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to see.
After Sheila O'Brien, a retired appellate judge, pushed for a reinvestigation, a special prosecutor was appointed to investigate the controversial dismissal of Smollett's felony charges. A judge ruled that the county state attorney, Kim Fox, mishandled the case after appointing her own top deputy to oversee it, which she had no right to do. He said the other problem is that an anonymous special prosecutor should have handled it.
The question is, will the special prosecutor ever find out why our state's attorney did what was done in this case? Perhaps. We'll see. We have to see what the special prosecutor decides to do.
Smollett was dismissed of 16 felony counts of disorderly conduct, but now he faces being retried with those charges. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Southeast Asian countries are facing the important choice between two big powers. NTD's Kitty Wong spoke with U.S. congressmen to learn why this choice exists and what's really at stake.
This week, President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping will meet during the G20 summit in Japan. Southeast Asian countries are watching closely to see how the U.S.-China trade war will develop. U.S. Congressman Ed Case said there's one thing standing in the way of progress.
The real problem, the real diversion between us and China has been around our perception that China wants to play by its own rules, but not by an international set of rules that has served everybody well.
A U.S. congressional delegation visited Southeast Asia recently. They say many countries are facing a difficult choice between the United States and China. For many Southeast Asian countries, China is their largest trading partner, and at the same time, they rely on the United States for security and defense.
We obviously need to reach out to our allies, our friends, and more importantly to those that may not be on the same page with us, and reassure them of our commitment to the Asia Pacific and to the world, and that we will, put the resources and beliefs of the United States behind it.
And a lot of the coercion that I believe China has used militarily and economically around the Indo-Pacific region is a result of our lack of a fair trade agreement with China that allows them to have such a trade imbalance.
At the ASEAN Leaders Summit in Thailand last weekend, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations developed a strategy document called Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. It emphasizes commitment to ASEAN centrality, cooperation, and inclusiveness within the region, but does not make a clear choice between the United States and China. However, U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense Randy Shriver gave ASEAN countries a reminder last week.
When you actually say, okay, don't choose between countries or capitals, but can you choose respect for sovereignty and independence of all nations, large and small? Can you choose peaceful resolution of disputes? Can you choose free, fair, reciprocal trade and investment?
Shriver says as long as countries agree with these universal principles and values, they will naturally stand with the U.S. and promote that vision.
Hong Kongers continue to demonstrate against the controversial extradition bill. An image of a lone girl meditating in front of riot police has emerged as an icon of the protest. Our reporter spoke with the 26-year-old about her faith in freedom.
It's 2 a.m., June 12th. In the middle of a tense face-off between shield-bearing police and demonstrators, Lam Kao-lau sits down, closes her eyes, and begins to meditate. This singular act of calm and serenity sends a message loud and clear. I just wanted to tell them that we do not want you to keep on advancing. At the same time, I don't want to attack you either. Her picture circulated widely on social media. People call her Shield Girl and are saying it's an act of beauty in the face of brutality. At that time, I was thinking I should first do what I'm supposed to do. Maybe that will inspire others to do more. And gradually, you don't know how far this butterfly effect can go. More people joined and sat by her side. Some held flowers to show the police their hope for a peaceful resolution. I, along with the students and other Hong Kongers, want to stand up and safeguard the city. We don't want the Hong Kong government to think that we're just a bunch of people who work hard to earn money and buy a house. It isn't like that. But at around 3 p.m., as some protesters attempted to break the police line, local police used pepper spray, tear gas, rubber bullets, and beanbag guns to remove them. More than 80 civilians were injured. This movement till now, I haven't seen a successful result. I haven't seen the freedom we wanted. But I hope that we Hong Kongers know that for freedom, we can use our lives to fight for it. Everyone can do what God wants us to do. So this protest is 2 million people. Let me see a more powerful and beautiful future. More protests are expected to come next week as protesters ask Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam to step down and for the government to release demonstrators who are detained. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
SpaceX launched 24 experimental satellites into space in what the company calls one of the most difficult launches it's ever attempted.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket blasted off today from Kennedy Space Center in Florida at around 2:30 a.m. local time. The two side boosters separated safely as the craft began its 6-hour mission to deploy the satellites. The side boosters then returned to Earth, setting down on Air Force landing pads several minutes after liftoff. However, the rocket's center booster missed its landing pad, crashing into the Atlantic Ocean. The mission had 4 separate upper stage engine burns and 3 separate orbits to deploy all of the satellites. One of the most unusual payloads is a light sail, a crowd-funded project that aims to be the first spacecraft in Earth's orbit propelled solely by sunlight. If successful, it could be used as a propulsion system to maneuver future satellites without the use of rockets.
When the wheel was invented, it caused a revolution. Inventors are always hoping to come up with the next big thing. NTD's Eileen Eng tells us what she found on day 1 at the Silicon Valley's 2nd Annual International Invention Festival.
It kicked off with an opening ceremony at the Santa Clara Convention Center. This year, about 20 judges will be looking at over 170 inventions. The judges are also inventors themselves.
If you're an inventor and you have this idea and you pull it out of your head, and the next thing you know, you make it and you get to see it, you get to touch it, and then if it comes to market, people get to use it. That's a wonderful feeling for inventors.
I seem to find little problems, and I can't stop doing it. I think it's in my blood.
They are looking for 3 things: if the invention has a patent, how close it is to being commercialized, and whether or not it is marketable. People who don't have the resources to start their own business can consider renting the idea.
What I'm trying to teach everybody, there's another method. It's called licensing, where you come up with a great idea, you show it to a company that's already in business so they can take that idea to market for you.
Companies from around the world are here to share their latest inventions. Most are focused on improving one's lifestyle.
Ideas range from beauty care to transportation conveniences. One company created a solar-powered bus stop to purify air while passengers wait for their ride.
We actually recycle the air. So the clean air that we actually bring in, we bring it back into our system, and then we just continue to use it.
Other ideas are a little out of this world. This inventor has been researching cosmic waves from space to cure certain illnesses.
Your neurons will get stimulated to repair themselves.
Regardless of the method, these inventors share a common wish to serve humanity and help create a better world. Eileen Ng, NTD News, Santa Clara.
As temperatures heat up for the summer and Germany braces for a blistering heat wave, even the elephants are opting for a cold shower.
Amid the blistering heat, elephants in the Berlin Zoo took refreshing showers from a hose pipe to cool down their sensitive skin. Meanwhile, their water-shy furry friends, the meerkats, were given ice treats to help stay cool. According to the German Weather Service, temperatures are expected to reach 109 degrees Fahrenheit midweek. Doctors say the risks of heat stroke, exhaustion, or circulatory failure increase significantly if temperatures go above 98 degrees. Particularly senior citizens, babies, and people with illnesses are at risk. People are recommended to avoid physical exertion during the day, stay in the shade, and drink at least 2 liters of water every day.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Cindy Drucare.